And then she never even came back. She didn't like come back and be like, yes, it is appendicitis. Literally just the surgery team showed up. They literally were like, all right, so it's appendicitis. And I was like, are we like working off of theory here? Like, what are we talking about? And they're like, no, we saw your CT scans. Like, we have an opening because it's the weekend. Like, we just got to get the surgeon back from home. Like, he just went to the gym or something. We just have to grab him and then we can get you in surgery. And then they have me back within like 20 minutes. So it was like a whirlwind of a day, but they said I was like young and I was healing well. So, okay, let's do the podcast. And so now the appendix is out. And unless there are complications with recovery, no other organ they can take out of me. So now we need to complete the cycle. And like James Cameron's ghost will stop trying to fucking murder
Even
me
though
or
he's
something.
alive.
Yeah, but like he's alive and well, but some part of his demonic spirit does not want me to have an opinion on his films, which we can get into the James Cameron of it all because he has become like my favorite person over like the last week. He's become my idol.
Hello and welcome back to Remake Hot Take, the show where we play studio executives pitching remake ideas of our favorite and new media. I'm Marriya Schwarz.
And I'm Brooke Rees. And this week we are talking about James Cameron's new Avatar, The Way of the Water. And I think touching a little bit on the first one too. But just so everyone knows, if you're not up to date on our social media, we took a little break there because the first time that we tried to film this, I got stuck in Pennsylvania. That was last week because I was supposed to drive home after visiting my parents and then realized that my car had gotten like a tire rotation and an oil change that past Friday, and my like tire was making this like noise. It was like a so we brought it back in and we were like, hey, like what's going on? And they were like, oh, like it's totally fine, but we'll like take a look at it again. They didn't see anything. Keep in mind, it's a like 5.5 hour drive from Pennsylvania back to Cleveland. And so then they like looked at it one more time because I was like, okay, like here's like the recording that I took of it, like making this noise. And we played the recording and they were like, oh, okay. And so they looked at it and then they were like, oh, yeah. So your one wheel is supposed to be connected by like 4 lug nuts. It was connected by like 1.5. And the thing that the lug nuts are supposed to drill into, it's like a disc that's like a part of the wheel and like the rim mechanism was missing, just did not exist. So it not only was it only being hung on by like 1.5 loose lug nuts, it also wasn't drilled into the thing it was supposed to be drilled into. That turned into a fiasco. Would have died maybe on the highway, but the wheel would have come off. So they didn't have a wheel there though.
The car couldn't finish you off, so then your own body was like, I'll take over.
Yeah, so we skipped recording last week. I eventually got home. They didn't even replace the tire. They finally did that like a week later, but got home safely. The joke of today's episode, we both think that, you know, James Cameron likes to run long. He likes to take his time with the story he's telling, and this one's like 3.5 hours long. But I started Avatar: Way of the Water with an appendix and I ended without it. That's how long this movie is. I lost an entire organ from the time I started rewatching this to the time I finished it. That's the other update, is that the second time we tried to go ahead and film this, I got appendicitis, which was really fun. Would recommend to everyone. Went into the ER after like, first of all, women are amazing and beautiful, because I was like, yeah, this is really painful. But like, I would have gone to work. Like if it was the weekday, I would have gone to work because I was like, it feels like really bad period cramps, but like I can't really fall asleep. And like the only reason I went in is because like nothing was helping with the pain. Like even if I took like Tylenol and I took a bath and had a heating pad, it still was painful. But I still was like, I don't know, maybe this is gas or something. I was like, let me minimize the pain that I'm in here. And then I got into the ER and they were like, oh shit, we're going to take that out of you right now. So then I was in pain for 12 hours, waited in the ER waiting room for 2 hours, then was in the ER for 10 hours before they said it is appendicitis. And then they took out my appendix. And then like 4 hours later, I went home after that. And now I am post-op about 30 hours now. And I was like, we got to finish the podcast because this is clearly a curse and I need to end this chapter. But yeah, James Cameron, you're running a little bit long on this story because I literally started it, got about like 30 minutes into it, then started developing the debilitating appendicitis pain. And then I finished it up, finished up the movie like a couple hours ago for the last chunk there.
Are you
And
suing or?
yeah, I am going to be pursuing legal action for James Cameron and company. But yeah, that's like the background story. So if I sound a little bit like, if my throat sounds a little bit throaty, that's because I was intubated with the surgery. If it just sounds a little like hoarse or weak, or if I seem to have any lack of energy, it's because I do.
You look a
Um,
little blue. Is that
yeah,
part of it?
if I look a little green, that is a side effect of the surgery. It's coming off more blue in this light. That's just the nausea and vomiting from the appendicitis. The ear lengthening, that's another very common side effect
Okay, I
of
didn't
an
realize.
appendectomy. So do not be afraid. But yeah, that's the little background. Now, if we can jump into it. So I saw Avatar Way of the Water when it came out in theaters initially, like 6 months ago or whatever, and then rewatched it for the pod. But was this your first watch through once it came out on the streaming?
Yeah. And I
Okay.
don't think I would watch it again unless if it was to count all of the bros. Whenever James Cameron didn't know what to say, he just put in the word bro.
Yeah, he was like there was a lot of brother being thrown around there. He
Mm-hmm.
was really concerned with the family unit in this movie.
Fuck
But
sisters, right?
yeah, he was like, the sisters are useless and they're gonna get captured many times. But and had you seen Avatar? Were you like a fan of the Avatar series before this? Had you seen
Um,
it a bunch?
I mean, I saw it.
Okay.
I've definitely seen it multiple times because my
Mhm.
dad likes it.
It is a very dad movie.
It's
This
a
is
very
also
dad movie.
yeah, I like the original one a lot, and it's one that I have in my like regular rotation, but it is one that like I watch with my dad like whatever 10, 15 years ago when it first came out. Whenever I rewatch it, it's usually with him in the room. But yeah, so it is something that's in my regular rotation. And I was like kind of like highly anticipating the sequel, and he took his time to make the sequel as well, like I think 14 or 15 years or whatever. And then the actual making of the film, I get like a lot of like behind the scenes stuff on TikTok of it, and he's like amazing. He's an innovator. But you know, I think he's like he's like that kid in a group project that like turns it in like on the last day of the semester, and it is like really good, but you're like, you did not need to take this much time on the project. And also you were like 150,000 words over the word limit.
I would not say really good. I think that is being generous. I think it's clear that he created this film like in those small gaps between his deep dives to the Titanic ruins. Like I think that was on the forefront of his mind, and we could have done a lot more here.
Yeah.
Because I didn't think it made sense at all, and I was really mad at it, and I was mad that it wasted my time, and it's like 3 hours I will never get back. I'm planning on joining the lawsuit if you do end up taking
Class
legal
action.
action.
Okay.
So
We're gonna expand it then into class action lawsuit. Yeah, I guess we can jump into our like our overall impressions and then get into the nitty-gritty. But my like seeing it in theaters, I was a lot more generous with what I was giving it when I saw
how
it
do
in
you
theaters
watch
a
it
couple months
without
back.
peeing?
I don't know. I have a strong bladder. But I've like never gotten up in the middle of a movie. I just have my like
I vomited
pelvic
once.
floor. Oh no.
Thor
In the for
Ragnarok.
Oh, okay. Um,
No, okay. That's okay to puke during because
well, that's
they're green
fine.
on screen. I'm green in my seat, so
But yeah, I was a lot more generous with this movie when I saw it in the theaters with my
I
dad
think
like
when you
6
see
months
things in
ago.
theaters, you're like, wow. The
Yeah,
lights
I
are
think
dark. It's an experience we all went through together. I don't think watching on HBO Max, or which is called
yeah.
Max now since we like last filmed, was that experience.
Yeah, I think there is like an essence to theater watching that makes me love like the movie even if it was kind of shitty, and it is just like part of like I went to like I paid like $30 for this popcorn and $20 for these reclining leather seats, so I'm gonna enjoy
I
myself.
think
But
there's a certain high that comes with it. Like you
yeah,
kind
there
of
is.
lose track of things. Like I remember seeing the first Suicide Squad and coming out and being like, that was incredible.
You're like, this is cinema. This is what it's about, guys. And I don't go to the theater enough, like either, because people that go to the theater every single time, the movies lose their magic for them a little bit. I
Mhm.
only go like once every like 2 or 3 months, even though I'm like supposedly I have a film degree. I only go like every couple months, so I still get the high each time. So I give it a lot more credit. But yeah, upon the rewatch, because I think there's supposed to be a third one. And so I can't tell if it's just like one of those things where it's all gonna make sense once the third one finally comes out. Like it's no excuse that like he's able to give us like kind of a shitty one in the middle here that has like a lot of loose ends and a lot of things that didn't make sense. James Cameron weirdly has become like a fucking icon in my mind with RIP to the Ocean Gate submarine, but like finding out that he's like a world renowned like deep sea diver, and this is like his passion. Like James Cameron is the way of the water. This is his thing. And then he has been on like 30 plus dives. And then I also saw, because I watched that TikTok, then I got like a bunch more James Cameron TikTok stuff. And it's like, he just seems like really smart. And like, I don't know, like NASA consulted him on something. The one TikTok that I saw like just a couple hours ago was like proving that Jack and Rose could not have both been like on the
That came
door.
up on mine too.
I don't know who he got volunteered to do that, but it looked like they were like hooked up to like oxygen readings, because they were actually putting them in like water that was freezing to simulate the conditions of hypothermia and how they would be shaking and how their bodies react. And he was like, I love a petty bitch, is basically what I'm saying. And James Cameron, I don't know what context this is in, since I just got a snippet of it on my TikTok, but I love a petty bitch, and I love that he was like, actually, they could not have both fit on that door. And here's why: A, B, C, D. And then in conjunction with like, oh, he's actually like a world renowned diver. I was like, I trust this man. So that's how I came into this. And so I was like, maybe let's just say, like, let's suspend our belief. And maybe it's just a situation where like the third one's really gonna like bring it home. And the second one just needed to be like a little bit of like filler and a little bit of advancing the plot so we can really get back to like tugging on our heartstrings. Let's dive into the dive with water. Let's dive into, was there anything that you liked about it?
It was pretty to look at.
It is. He's very good at creating visually
But I
stunning
don't even know
films.
if he does that. Like I think, I think that's more like the art teams. I don't think the storytelling was good at all. It just didn't make any sense to me. Like the first movie I like because it makes sense. The situation that we have is that Jake Sully is sent to Pandora because to try to find this like element, unobtainium.
Unobtainium. Yeah.
And they find it in the Tree of Souls, so they decide to like decimate the Na'vi because they're basically in the way. So we have a goal, get this element. And so we have a motive of like why we're fighting Jake Sully, because he like goes with the Na'vi. This next movie, they're like, the big thing is that the Earth is going to take over Na'vi. Like we need to move the Earth population somewhere else. But then I don't understand why we're spending all of United States taxpayer money on trying to get Jake Sully. Like how does that help the goal? Like it just didn't make any sense to me, like why we're funding this like army guy to get his revenge on Jake Sully when he's like not even really dead. Like just like you've been reborn. Christ has reborn you. Like just like move on. I didn't understand how that plan was greenlit. I didn't understand how it added to a whole plot. Then there was also a whaling plot that wasn't even added until like an hour into the movie. And so I just think like in creative writing, we call this throat clearing, where like you don't know where to start the project. And so you add in a bunch of unnecessary stuff to like world build so that you understand what's going on, but no one's supposed to see that shit. so don't put it on the
Yeah.
screen. Like, I just think he didn't know where to start the movie.
Yeah, I can understand, like, in theory, like the answer to one of your questions is that Jake Sully is like leading the army resistance of the Na'vi that
But
are
then he leaves. So why are we staying with him?
well, yeah, because like he's like the rebel leader of his insurgents. I think that from their perspective, he's like the head of a terrorist organization, right? And like the US is very dedicated to killing the figureheads of terrorist organizations, even though like once they die, someone will take over in his place. And from like the earth people, the sky people perspective is that this is like a territory that the US is trying to claim, and that Jake Sully is different from the other Na'vi people, even though he's been like mostly accepted into the society. He like has all of the knowledge of like military tactics that he brings with him before, and he like has this willingness to like use guns and use computers, like they're like computer screens, and they're like camp that they have up in the mountains before they leave. So I think this tracks with what the US would actually do. What I disagree with is that I expected better from James Cameron to give us a different villain other than someone that was the original movie's villain. Like that's what I don't like, is that we just have the same guy, and that's where I'm like, okay, maybe the third movie is going somewhere here. But when I saw that in the theater, I was like, you're fucking shitting my dick. I was like, we get the same exact big bad that we had last time. Like that doesn't make sense. And like that's like the main part that I take issue with, is that all the world building that he did in the first one was explaining like it was science heavy, right? And like from everything that I've learned about James Cameron, not really by my will in the last week and a half, he seems like someone that cares a lot about like the reasoning behind what he's doing and having it make sense scientifically, so much so that he's gonna like drown and give hypothermia to a couple of volunteers to make sure he's right about a door. And then, you know, it's all about the scientists in the first movie, and they talk about how building the avatar body is like a bazillion-dollar investment that they do, and it's like so specific to all of these readings that need to be right. My main thing is like, how did they get their brain matter juices or like their memory or their essence or whatever to like plug in to the other guy? Because we see he crushes his own skull, and I think it does lend itself to like a good metaphorical story for the captain. You know, he has become the evil that he tried to eradicate and that killed him, and now he is that same creature. But like he doesn't learn any lesson from that. We don't really, the only character development we see from that is from a kid that we didn't know existed in the first movie, which is my other main gripe. It's just like, oh yeah, by the way, at some point the colonel like fucked someone else that was at this army base, and you're telling me that they just decided that there was no way to send this kid back to Earth, even though I'm pretty sure that they said that they were in cryo for like 6 years. So even if they couldn't have the kid on cryo, couldn't they like, I'm sure someone like in the TikTok comments right now is going to answer like why this is wrong, but like just theoretically it seems like they could send the kid back with like a nanny and like enough food supplies to last 6 years worth. I don't know. So my two main gripes are like, it seems stupid that we just have the same bad guy in the same exact fight with each other that we had in the first one. Now we're just round two, ding, 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 different bodies though. And then we bring Spider into it, and it wasn't something that was ever mentioned. And then my third main issue is that then Kiri is like from Grace, right?
Yeah,
Grace's
Gray's fucking Virgin Mary, which wasn't necessary.
Yeah, which I mean, I Googled and it was like, yeah, it's supposed to say that like Kiri is not made from a man and a woman. She's made from like two women, and the other one is Awa. And like she's actually, that's why she can control the plants around her. She's like
that was
actually
not
a descendant.
explained.
Yeah, that's what Google said. I was like, oh, okay. Grace's body like died, and her avatar body at the end of the first one, because I rewatched the first one too this weekend.
Wait, so question. So we already know like women have to be afraid of like getting pregnant by men, but now we also have to look out for trees.
For Mother Nature may fuck you, and you will not be allowed to abort if you don't want the baby. But yeah, like Grace's body was like completely killed, and her avatar body was like in the middle of a war zone. Like, and they were, I was like, okay, at what point and with what like science left did they like take that body and like regenerate it? I don't know. But then she's in the tube, she gets pregnant. Okay, whatever. I'm willing to like overlook that part. I'm sure it's going to come into play later because, you know, they're building up Kiri's character.
I also thought that it was weird that Sigourney Weaver voiced her own
Yeah.
daughter because it like felt too mature compared to the other kids. I
It,
don't
it
know
was,
why they decided to make that decision, but
I didn't even know that it was Sigourney Weaver until like after I left the theater. I was like, what? Why? He just
it
wanted to
just
work with
sounds
the
off.
same group, but then and then my other main plot whole gripe is that Pandora is obviously like an entire world. And now it seems that the US's focus, you know, has shifted now to getting different minerals to pay for stuff back on Earth, like we see with the whale hunting sequence, and then or with the tulkun hunting sequence, and then we see like different base camps and stuff. But they say that like Norm, who's like the scientist, Norm and I think like Max is the other one, have like stayed on the planet this whole time and they help like raise Spider. Like, where are they for the rest of the
I
movie? Because
know.
they're like, oh, and also like, what are they doing there? Like, who's funding this? Like, are they still connected with the US government? How are they getting food? Like, they have to survive on oxygen masks. Like,
When they have the big like final battle or whatever, I didn't
mhm.
understand why it's like only Jake Sully's family. Like they had a whole
Yeah.
entire tribe. Like where did these people go? Like they're
Yeah.
all at
And
the
like,
funeral. So I'm like, why? Where did you go during when we actually needed you?
yeah, it's just like rewatching them back to back, I can really see like the shortfalls of the second one because in the first one we have like these multiple battle sequences and it's like a
Mhm.
complicated back and forth and back and forth, and really like the only like main action sequence we have here is at the very end with the boat, and it's like he doesn't want them to leave this fucking boat. Even that writing, it was like, okay, the action isn't even like now there's a climax here and then they're set back again. It's literally like all he could come up with is like, okay, they're tied to the boat. Then I'm going to need them to be tied to the boat again. Then I'm going to have them fight on the boat, but then I'm going to have them try to leave the boat and then they're not going to be able to leave the boat. So I'm going to have them drown on the boat. Like he was
It's
like hanging on to his
Titanic
Titanic
too.
roots. I know. He was hanging on to his Titanic roots a little bit. You know, if he was doing the throat clearing or whatever that you said before, kind of just like putting all these ideas out here. I think he was like rewatching his old material and was like, I'm gonna have a sequence where they're down a long hall and the water slowly filling up. So yeah, there were definitely some issues here. And then I like how like Kiri's like entire family is dying behind her. And I know that like what she's doing is purposeful with the, getting all the like glowing fish to go and like find him. But I just think the juxtaposition is like, I don't think it was intentionally funny, but it reads very funny in that moment when it's literally everyone is dying around her, stuff is on fire. And then Kiri's like, I'm spinning like a
Well,
ballerina.
if you're on TikTok, I think the rest of her family is the okay, 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 and she's la 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 la.
Yeah, she's
She's
literally
definitely a
just
la la girl. I don't know. I didn't need Jake Sully as a father, and I thought the timeline was really confusing, and I couldn't tell when his kids were kids and when they were grown up, and
yeah.
it like the beginning went really fast, and then the rest of it went like glacier level slow.
I also don't like, I'm never a fan of sequels where we have like, this is just a personal preference thing. This isn't anything that like he could have avoided really, but I hate when we have like a first movie that's like so built up on like the tension of their romance and them finally getting together and they're so good as like a partnership, you know? And then the second one, it's like they have kids and they have like one date night, but I feel like we lost so much of their character. Like
Yeah.
this movie was so much more about the kids, but there were so many of them that I feel like we didn't get as much like rich character development with each one.
Yeah.
Um
Like when the
and-
older brother dies, I was like, cool, you're the one we've spent the least amount of
yeah,
time
I was
with, so
like,
I don't
I
really
don't
care.
even, yeah, I was like, I don't even know his name. And like, but then, you know, I cared about him when then they like connected with Awa at the end and we got to see him like fishing with his dad. I was like, that's very sad. I like cried at that moment. And I cried when like the tulkun was hunted down with her baby that she finally had. And I thought the whale sequence was the most powerfully emotional one, which I was, I know he wanted that scene to be emotional, but I think he also wanted the death of the kid to be emotional. And I was like, it doesn't even compare to the whale one because like you didn't give me enough time with this kid. Like I never got to really see too much of his emotions. I mean, we can tell that they call their father sir and they are thinking very militaristically and want to be like bigger men than they are and want to be involved. But like the first movie is just so much about learning about the world and learning about the tribe and then having this character development because Jake Sully, they call like a baby. And we have to learn all these things and how they do everything. But because we're like outsiders to this world, it's kind of like we also came to the world of like the water clans still from like the forest people's perspective. And even though they were like all babies again, they call them babies again and they have to teach them all this stuff. Like there was just like a disconnect there that I don't quite know like why that was happening versus like the rich introduction that we got to the Na'vi forest tribe people versus
there were just
the
so many
introduction we got to
characters.
them.
And I don't understand why the kids were the only ones who received like lifeguard training. Like, why are we like the parents also live there, but they don't know how to breathe? And I was like, that's a little weird. Why didn't I feel like we should learn how to tread water and do all that kind of good stuff. We all live here. We're all babies.
I thought it was intentional with Neytiri's because we see like she never even learned how to get like one of the underwater swimming swordfish type ones because I think that was intentional to her character because she very much does not want to be there, which is why like I just like was missing out on like or like almost like her ferocity because she is like almost like she's a secondary character. I mean, she's a main character, but she's secondary to Jake Sully in the first movie, but she is this ferocious, like badass lady. And I feel like we like lost some of Neytiri's spark in the second one. But I thought it was an intentional character choice to not have her like learn much about this new tribe. She very much loves her own forest people and she did not want to leave them. And so I think we see that at the end when she still has her like dragon, her like Ikron or whatever. And she uses that to fly into battle and she hasn't even learned how to use the other ones at all. So I thought that was like an interesting character choice, but I think I was missing just the like ferocity that she brought to her character in the first movie, and she's definitely more toned down in this one, which like motherhood, that'll do that to you, I guess.
But whenever she was fierce, like Jake like apologized for her, like when he was like, I apologize for my mate. She's come a long way and she's exhausted. So I wrote ick with all the blue. It's sometimes easy to forget that Jake Sully is just a white man.
A white man. Yeah. He's like, sorry, she's on her period. She's very hormonal. Like, please excuse her. Because it's like I liked their relationship more when she was in charge, honestly. Like I thought that they did better as a couple when she was the one. Like, because I feel like her like moral compass and like her ethics or whatever, I'm like so much more in line with, and she's all about like, I'm gonna do anything to help this tribe. And like Jake is coming at this from like, I understand how white people are so brutal that they will kill you instantly with their dozens of high grade militaristic like warfare tools that they have. But that's like not a fun thing to enjoy when you're watching a movie and an entertainment. If James Cameron's going to tell us the story, I guess, he's showing us the morals of like, is it better to run or is it better to fight? But with the first movie, we start to love the movie, and the climax of it is when we realize it's better to fight. And so this movie, and he says it at the end, right? That's like the whole realization at the end of Way of the Water. He says, oh shit, okay, I've realized that we can't run. And I think that's why this movie is a little bit lackluster.
That's what she was saying in the whole time.
That's what she said to begin with. But he was saying, I mean, I think he just learned the lesson that he can't keep his family safe just by running, because even though that they were running this whole movie, they were hiding away. he still lost a son, and now not only does he lose a son, but like they still don't have their actual home. So I think this movie, like, if we're gonna give James Cameron a little bit credit, maybe the vibes are off because okay, we won't give him credit, but like maybe the vibes are off because like this is a movie where we don't get the satisfaction, just the tiny snippet at the end of like the people fighting back against power. We just kind of get like the people running away from white people who will destroy them in an instant. So I'm curious to see what the third movie is going to do with that, though.
I don't know. I just think we could have done a lot more with it. Like, I just kept feeling like the bad people who had turned into Avatar, the way that we were leading was like, we're going to pretend to be Avatar and get like immersed into the culture and then we'll turn on them. That's what I thought was going to happen. And I thought
Because
that
that's
would
what
be
they
really fun.
say.
And that would have been a way for us to like understand the water people more because it would have been people getting used to things. But then they like kept on not doing that. And they're like, we're still like America first and we still have machine guns. So I like didn't understand what was going on. I didn't think the plan was thought out. The United States taxpayer is probably upset.
Yeah, that's why my like main gripe is like, why do we have the same group of bad people who are coming back? Because it's like I just felt like the Colonel story had ended. I liked where it had ended. It felt like it should have ended there, unless he's planning on doing a lot of character development with the Colonel in the third film. The only like reason that there would have been development is when, you know, it starts out they're saying that like, okay, like you said, we're gonna immerse ourselves in the culture. I was like, for a second, I was like, oh, okay, like, is this gonna be an opportunity for him to immerse himself in the culture just like Jake did? And then like fall in love with the way that like they interact with the land. I was like, okay, what a good opportunity.
That would have been a better movie.
And then they don't do that, or even if they had even engaged with that a little bit and then still gone back to the militaristic money over everything, that would have made sense to his character too. But like we just stayed in this weird part where he was still doing essentially everything that he did as the Colonel, just in the Avatar body. And I think they try to insert Spider as like some way to like bridge that gap, and that was his opportunity to, you know, get some of his humanity back, and he does. He saves his son over, you know, everything, but the son wasn't a character that we knew before, so it doesn't quite work because we only know Spider in the context of like him being with the family, and you know, he does resolve that at the end. He says like a son for a son, and they're supposed to, you know, metaphorically switch places now with his deceased son, and now he has the Colonel's. But like they said at the beginning that they treat him like a stray cat. Like Neytiri, like I guess we can discuss that. Like, do you think like she's like good to go with that situation? Because I think Neytiri still sees him. I don't think her opinion has changed. He says, Jake Sully says son for a son, and Neytiri's like son for a stray cat in my mind still. She's like, what the fuck is this thing? I don't think she's happy with that situation, but
well, she also sliced him in the chest.
Yeah,
I think child endangerment is
that's
like
another,
I don't trust it.
Yeah, that's another question, is like, do you think she would have killed Spider? And my answer is like, yeah, like we saw in the first movie, she's like a ruthless, she was gonna kill Jake the first time she saw him. Rightfully, she has been given no reason to trust the Sky people at all. And I think she would have used him in whatever way. She was hopeful that it would get him to stop. And I don't think she's not doing that needlessly to kill Spider, but I think she would have in an instant. So I think there's some tension there still. Payakon was like, I was like, hell yeah.
I like that a lot.
I like him. And I liked the whale sequence. Like I said, that was like the most emotional part of this movie for me. I was like, oh my God, it's so evil.
I like the animals, and I don't know why we just added so many characters, because I think then it kind of took away some time. And I like the idea of like the whaling subplot of like, now we're killing all these animals was really powerful. So I don't know why we had this other thing about like hunting Jigsaw. I don't know. I felt like that should have been the main thing. Like I watched the whole Free Willy trilogy, and they have a whole like whale hunting movie. Like it just felt like there were so many movies in this movie, and it was just like really confusing, because in the beginning of Free Willy 3, which is the whale hunting movie, we start out by saying like, the whale populations are going down. We don't know why. And
Mhm.
so we kind of have like some kind of understanding, but then we see these like whale hunters in Avatar, and we had no idea that all of these little whales are going missing. We didn't even know that this was a problem, and suddenly it's like dropped in on us. And I thought that was really confusing.
I watched Avatar and then watched this one back to back. So I wasn't too like taken out of it with the abrupt change to the whaling scene. I thought it was just like yet another example of how awful they are to the resources that this brings. And I thought the transition from like the first one, at least, you know, in this like culture, they are like physically and spiritually physically and spiritually connected to like the tree or whatever. But you know, it's easier to see it as like a plant. And then when that's the thing that's in danger, it's a little bit more like forgiving in that sense, because it doesn't seem as like wasteful as a life, because we don't even like really consider, even though they've told us that they can connect to this tree and they hear all their ancestors. But I
And it
think
can
it's
fuck you
easier
at any time.
at any time. It could impregnate you, as we soon find out. But I think it's easier for audiences to connect to the whale image, because even though it's not actually a whale, it's a tulkun. It looks different from a whale. It's a whale-like creature. It's so much easier for the audience to connect to the destruction of that, and versus like this tree, because they're going after a different substance now, but basically to meet the same ends as selling it back to Earth and making bajillions of dollars. But the fact that they just like Spider says, they're not even using like the whale meat or anything. They literally just kill this animal to drill up into like the core of its like brain or whatever, and then take the substance. There's no reason. I mean, they have a reason for their money grab, but
That's also like somewhat reflective on buffalo hunting of like
Mhm.
white people taking over native indigenous people's main source of food, as well as like warmth and clothing and all of that.
Yeah.
So then there's the whole other thing, because I didn't want to see Avatar because of a lot of the outrage from like native communities.
Yeah.
There's the whole thing of also like James Cameron is a white man. Like, should he be telling the story? Is it respectful to native communities? Which I don't think it fully is. And I think a lot of indigenous tribes have a lot of problems with it. I don't know. When I heard that James Cameron does all these dives to the Titanic and goes against some of those like ancestors' wishes of wanting their like burial ground to be the burial ground and not be disturbed and stuff, and like seeing this whole movie about where he loves the environment, but then he's like testing the boundaries of like environment. I don't know. It gives me the ick. He gives me the ick just in general. So I don't know. That's my personal perspective, is that, I just don't think that humans belong that deep in the ocean. Like
Mhm.
even like sharks don't go down there, and like that's where they live. Like when you're visiting someone and they're like, I don't really feel safe in that part of town, like you believe them because they live there. And so if sharks are like, that's a little deep for me, like why would humans go further than sharks? I just feel like that's really pompous, and I think it's
He
really
knows
testing
better.
limitations of like what the environment is letting you do. And I think I don't know. I don't like
Yeah.
James Cameron.
I don't know. I don't have any ick about the going down to the Titanic stuff. I don't know. I haven't done much research. What are like the native communities saying that they disagree with this movie? Just that like it's the right perspective, but it should be coming from a native person's. I mean, I thought very obvious in that it's, colonizers taking over a native space and then using it for their own gain and for capital stuff, because they've destroyed their own home. And then the environmental, side of that too is that the earth is dying because they used up all the resources and now they have to go to this other thing.
They're saying that it is appropriating native and indigenous cultures,
Mm-hmm.
without really having any native or indigenous representation, either like in cast or in the writing room or anything. James Cameron has said in like 2010 that he took all of the inspiration from visiting the like tribes.
And then doesn't give them representation or
It's just kind of, again, a white man building off of what indigenous people have always done without actually benefiting them at all. And so people are saying like he could give us a call, he could give, we're like, you know, we're famous for storytelling, like you could involve us. And so some people are saying that like Blueface is also like a kind of a racist caricature.
Oh, should I not be dressed up?
Oh no, I think yeah, we're gonna be canceled right now. Yeah, so it's like they're talking about having, I'm sorry, but non-Indigenous people dress up in blue costumes to characterize their songs, dances, and languages as an act of something that they've often seen of colonial culture throughout history.
Why is it Blueface? I've never heard of Blueface before. Is that like something specific that happens? I've heard of like Redface.
Yeah, that's just what a lot of the representatives of the tribes are saying.
I think like his meanings are good, right? Like he is saying the same things, that what is happening is bad, but he's doing it from a white man's perspective, where he also is, like you said, if that's true what he said, that he is taking inspiration from going to visit like an indigenous tribe and then taking that to make a multi-billion-dollar franchise that he doesn't like give them credit for and doesn't ask the indigenous tribes their opinion of that before proceeding. Does he seems like he consults with like so many experts, at least about like the technical aspect of all of these things, and he didn't consult with one. Okay, so bad for him, bad to do that. So we want these stories to be told, but they should be told with the people whose experiences they are based on.
Like it makes sense to me. Like if you're telling an indigenous story, work with indigenous people. Like that just like it doesn't feel like a strange concept to me. So
yeah, he has the resources to do so. Yeah, I mean, would love to see the day where that is the case, but I mean, I do still agree with the main meanings of the film. It's just an issue with how he went about it. But I guess, like, do you think that this is just like a process that will Hollywood ever be better at this? And is it better to tell stories that are along the same ideals, or do you think it's never gonna get better? Like, I don't know. That's more of like a philosophical question, I guess. Is it better to like not have these movies made at all if they're not going to be done right? Or is it good to get like the general mass of like people to start thinking about these things and interacting them? I guess maybe it's like a step-by-step process, right? Like we needed a white man to recognize that there were some of these issues, and now that more people are like introduced to this franchise, which is like one of the most popular and biggest like productions ever, I guess maybe it's like a stepping stone that the more people that are exposed to it, the more people can like ask the questions that we're asking now, and maybe it's more of an opportunity for it to be done better later.
I mean, I'm just thinking about like from like an Indian perspective, like if a white man wrote a story that is meant to be a playing off of like the British colonial rule of India,
and then
without actually consulting any Indian people, I think I would be really pissed, you know?
Yeah, like, and then put everyone in blueface to represent the indigenous people. Not good. Okay, do we want to jump into our remakes then? Well, for my remakes, I think that the tulkun, so the whales, needed just like one little day trip to Earth to talk to the orcas that are currently trying to take back the ocean for themselves. Because, you know, their whole thing in the movie is that they realize that violence is never good. And even if it has a purpose, it's always bad and always leads to more violence. And then Pia Khan's like, fuck that shit, man. I'm going in guns a-blazing. And I'm like, hell yeah, Pia Khan. I'm like, that is how we do it here. On Pandora, I was like, I agree with you. I mean, even though that's a very like peaceable way of living, when Pia Khan like goes and he like he's an absolute badass, and he like flops himself on the
And
on
everyone else dies, so
and everyone else dies. I'm like,
tested, approved.
I think that they just needed, like, we just need to get the group together, and then Payakan, he's already like, he's the field trip leader, and then they just go to Earth real quick. They just have a little like conversation with the orcas. They get their perspective, and then we're all back on the same page here. And we can stop this whaling industry, which I know is like a silly viewpoint of all of this, but the orcas have been, I'm on team orca is basically what I'm saying. And they should be attacking any boat that comes their way. And I don't know, like eating the livers out of sharks or something. Maybe we could avoid that part, but I'm team orca, and I think that they could take some lessons from them. And then another remake is that like the like motto of this film about the family unit is that the Sullys stick together. And so I think, if we wanted to just add like one other plot line, this is all about like being like in the water and everything. So I think we have like the whole fight scene, and then we kind of zoom out, and like in the distance, we see like an airplane being perfectly landed safely on the water by Captain Sully that landed in the Hudson or whatever. But he lands it here because he's also a Sully, and he's heard the call from the Sully to stick together. And so he just lands the plane beautifully in the background. Like, it never is really brought up, but you do
But
see
it's Tom Hanks.
It's Tom Hanks, and it's landed perfectly on the waters of Pandora in the background. And then we get all of the Sullys. Similarly, when they're there, like a creature comes out of the water, but he like shakes his fur off a little bit. And then it's also Sully from Monsters Inc. Because he's the perfect blue for this as well. Like he perfectly blends in to the surrounding, and he actually does belong here. So I think we just needed to like the Sullys stick together, but we needed to see a little bit more representation from the Sullys of this, of this world. So Sully from Monsters Inc. also does emerge from the water and shake off his fur, and then goes over to join the rest of his blue friends. Also, like we should have seen more of Ariel, but also like one lady who's like the daughter of this tribe. I feel like she looks a little bit like Halle Bailey, doesn't she?
Yeah,
a tiny bit. Like she does. Like that's how Ariel would have looked if they went like full fish with the Ariel. So I think that has a lot of potential for crossover as well, because that actress looks like shockingly like her, in my opinion, in this blue form. But yeah, so this is the way of the water. Ariel should have been featured a little bit more prominently. And I think that if we made this a musical, it would be a lot better. Like, would it not just like lift your spirits if like all of this shit was happening, and then like an octopus in the corner wearing like drag makeup was singing to you about like selling your soul? I think that would really bring the mood up a little bit. But
what a very specific example.
That just came from my brain.
Very nice.
What about you? What are your remakes?
So I've always kind of had an issue with the fact that to ride or connect with an animal, you have to kind of fuck them. I've always had an issue with that, where like the same things that Jake and Neytiri do during sex, they do with the animal, and then the tree that also can fuck you as well. So I think maybe to ride the animals, you should just have to put on one of those shitty Pandora charm bracelets. Because I think that's a little bit less penetration.
I like it.
And then this is more like a remake on the first movie, but I think the avatars should have been like a lot shittier, because I think they would have figured out Jake Sully a little easier if like he's like trying to walk in the forest, and then there's like a tree stump right in front of him, and he's like, help. And then like he can't go to the bathroom on his own. He's like,
if he was speaking Simlish.
Yeah, so if the avatars were replaced by Sims, I think it would be a lot more comedic.
I like that. Yeah. Sometimes they're just like wandering around in circles and they like
Mhm.
can't really he can't get the game controls to really line up there.
And you can tell who is like a real like Navi versus like an avatar Navi because they have the little like diamonds on them. They have the little sim diamond. Then like Jake is getting ready for battle and like you know he's serious because he has a little red. And then my last one was the title, Avatar: The Way of Water. I think like everything else in this movie, we take a while to get to the point, even in the title. So I would recall it just Avatar Wet. That's the way
Okay.
of water. Let's just get to the point. And then it's also an hour and a half shorter. Would you like Who's Your Daddy?
Yeah.
So Sigourney Weaver is a Nepo baby. Her mom was Elizabeth Inglis, who was an English actress. Her dad was Pat Weaver, who served as president of NBC from 1953 to 1955, and he created NBC's Today Show. Her uncle was
Oh.
Doodles Weaver, who was a comedian who hosted his own NBC show, and he used to write for Mad.
His name was Doodles?
I don't think it was his birth name. Brooke, what have you been watching lately?
I have been watching What We Do in the Shadows, which I had seen like maybe like a total of 4 episodes from the first season. Like my roommate and I would watch one episode every 2 months. But now we've gotten like more into a groove with it. And it is so funny. It is such a good show. Like they really nail it. Like just everyone seemed like they're having a good time when they made this. And I've been really enjoying it. So highly would recommend What We Do in the Shadows. And then I saw the Pope's Exorcist with my roommate as well, which is
Is that a
Russell
documentary?
no, it is based on a true story, but it's Russell Crowe and it's literally like the Pope in like the 1980s, I think, had like the Exorcist was like an official position in the Vatican in the Catholic Church. And it's like just a horror movie of this Pope going to exorcise this like one demon in Spain, and like Russell Crowe is on like a tiny little Vespa and like riding like the I don't know like 10 hours to his destination, and then he rides it back to Rome. It's okay, honestly, not that like scary for a horror movie, not that scary for like exorcism in particular style horror movies. So I would give it like a 2 out of 5. Like it wasn't great, but I did watch it. My friends and I are like trying to plan a trip to Italy in October, so we were like, we got to get in the mood. We got to watch like not Italian movies because Italian cinema is in and of itself its own thing, but just like American movies kind of based around the theme of Italy. So we watched Under the Tuscan Sun, and then When in Rome with Kristen
I
Bell.
love that movie.
Yeah. Oh, I love Josh Duhamel too. He's like the perfect man in that movie. Like nothing even phases him. He has like no character flaws and there's never any tension with him. He's just like, this girl's crazy. I love her. And I love that energy. So When in Rome, Under the Tuscan Sun. I watched Murder Mystery, which I think they're in Italy for a brief amount of time, but Murder Mystery with Adam Sandler and Jennifer Aniston, which I like enjoyed. I'm not the
I love
biggest
that
Adam
movie.
Sandler person. Yeah, but it was good. I want to see have you seen the sequel?
Mm-hmm.
Is the sequel as good?
I liked it.
Yeah, it was like good because I'm always like I always approach Adam Sandler movies with a little bit of hesitancy, but I feel
I
like
think
his
he works really well with Jennifer Aniston. She kind
yeah,
of grounds it.
yeah, it brings it back down to like a level of reality that's still ridiculous but still fun because and I think Adam Sandler has like toned down a lot in recent years too. Like I like his style of humor a little bit more now. Like his stuff before was like a little too outlandish for me to appreciate, but so I really liked Murder Mystery.
I think Adam Sandler is also making like a friend of mine's book to movie adaptation soon. So
Oh really?
yeah, we love Adam Sandler.
Just like a casual friend of yours is getting a movie adaptation?
Well, like an acquaintance.
Okay.
We've emailed. So I watched The Circle, which was awful, with Emma Watson and Tom Hanks, where it's like about the circle that's like more information is power, and so they spy on everyone, and I don't know, it's really awful. It was like they were trying to say something by making it, but they didn't. So that wasn't my favorite. But Bill Paxton is in it, and he which I found really interesting about him. I believe he's passed away now, but at the age of 8, he was in the crowd when President John F. Kennedy emerged from the Hotel Texas in Fort Worth on the morning of his assassination. And there are a bunch of pictures of Paxton, like it was like a famous photograph or something of him in the audience on that morning. So, which I found was interesting.
Did he do it?
I don't believe so.
It?
Last I heard is I think they got the guy, but there are all these like things where it's like I watched a whole like conspiracy theory video on it where there was like a thing where they thought that the gun was like in an umbrella and stuff. I don't know. There was like all this stuff. I watched the BuzzFeed Unsolved or whatever on it. And then I watched Don't Worry, Darling, which I liked. I'm like now blanking on any of the actual details of it, but she's like a surgeon or something, and we need to protect women in STEM was my big takeaway from that. But I didn't realize that the guy who played Trystane Martell in Game of Thrones is Florence Pugh's brother. I didn't realize that was that connection. And Nick Kroll's father is a billionaire businessman who founded the corporation's investigations and risk consulting firm Kroll Inc. Chris Pine, we've talked about before. Olivia Wilde comes from a big family of writers. Her original last name is Cockburn, which is unfortunate, but her dad was a British journalist. Her mom is a producer for 60 Minutes. And then I also watched Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, which was fine. Like I mean, I really like Scarlet Witch, so it was sad to see her in like a villain role kind of thing.
Is she now a villain?
Yeah, in this one where she's like, I'm going to destroy the multiverse because I have children, but they're in another universe. And I just like to imagine that like Scarlet Witch goes to like mom groups and she's like, oh my God, it's so hard being a mom. And then they're like, you don't even have kids. And she's like, not in this universe, but when I dream, I do. But yeah, so it was interesting. Benedict Cumberbatch is from the famous rich white family, the Cumberbatch family. They had properties in Barbados, which used enslaved labor. So a lot of people have called out Benedict Cumberbatch for all of that. At one point, they were one of the richest families in England. So like Darcy level, kind of think that.
Thank you for relating it to Pride and Prejudice.
Yeah, of course. My pleasure. His dad, Timothy Carlton, is a theater actor, and he's been in a bunch of BBC TV stuff. His mom is Wanda Ventham, who's had a lot of TV roles. And Cumberbatch is actually a third cousin, 16 times removed, of King Richard III. So I'm sure that got him in. And then I saw Free Willy 2 and 3, which I probably prefer over the Avatar movies. It's similar in environmental protection, but I think if we had split Avatar: The Way of Water into 2 movies, I think I would have liked it better, or like episodes. I don't know. It was just like a lot of movies in one movie. Free Willy 1 goes about like keeping whales in like a zoo aquarium setting, and then we go into like oil spillage, and then we go into whaling. So it's like they take their time in each one. This one, it's like all the Free Willy multiverse, and I just think it's too much. And then I've been trying to find like a good TV show to watch. So I started The Crowded Room on Apple TV Plus or whatever. I think it was the first killer that used like multiple personalities as like the defense. So it's based on a true story, and it has like Tom Holland in the main role, and it's just like very, very trippy of like, we know where it's leading, where it's like he's talking about like, oh, I didn't do this, it was my friend Ariana, but like we all know that like that's just like another one of his personalities. So I think it's interesting. A lot of people don't like it and are kind of like hating on Tom Holland about it, but I'm just going to give it a chance. Tom Holland is the son of Dominic Holland, who is a pretty big comedian. And then there's another guy who plays one of the personalities, Lior Raz, who got his start in entertainment. Not necessarily as a Nepo baby, but because he was Arnold Schwarzenegger's bodyguard, which I think is a really interesting way to make it in. And it also has Maya Hawke's brother, who's also the son of Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman. And then I just started watching Catching Killers on Netflix, which is scary, but I watch it to learn how to not be killed.
Okay.
It's just like a true crime thing, and I'm just learning don't trust anyone. And I saw this thing on TikTok recently that reminds me, do you ever think about how like your best friend is just someone you randomly decided to trust one day? You could turn on me so quick.
I could. I don't live near you though. That would have to be like a kill that I have to commute to.
I didn't say you have to kill me. You could just kill my reputation.
Okay.
Think bigger.
Okay, yeah, you're right. You're right. Thank you for inspiring me to be more evil every day.
You're welcome.
Oh, all right. Well, where can they find you, Marriya?
They can find me hiding from murderers. But they can find
your
me.
doors be locked?
Yeah, always. I check them every time I walk past because I'm really freaked out.
Really?
And I can't watch this show at night.
No.
Because it's mainly like, young women getting murdered by men. They can find me on social media at marriyaschwarz, and they can find the podcast at Remake Hot Take on social media. Also social media, basically. Where can they find you, Brooke?
You can find me on Instagram as B_ReesieCup and on Twitter as ReesBrooke1.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Sure.
Where do they put your appendix?
My mom did say I should ask to see if I could get it in a jar, but they just throw it away with medical waste. She was tossed in the garbage, like the little castaway vestigial organ that she was. But yeah. R.I.P. little appendy. We did have to break up though, because she was actively trying to end my life. But yeah, so we'll see what that hospital bill is. That's gonna be fun. That's gonna be fun and fresh.
Ask James Cameron to pay for it.
He has the money. He has the money and he has the funds. So that's it. Bye, guys.
Bye.